I just got three things to say. God bless our troops, God bless America, and gentlemen, start your engine!
Welcome to the Stire Sound podcast with your hosts, Trey, Stire, and Jack Noel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of the Stire Sound. This is episode number 15, but in today's episode, it is dedicated to a Motocross of Nations preview. After months of anticipation, we are finally here. Ironman Raceway this weekend. It is going to be a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to bench race about as well. I believe we have 38 different nations on the entry list. Of course, only 20 will be able to compete for the Chamberlain Trophy. But there's a lot to cover, from favorites to potential wild cards and contenders to some teams that might be able to sneak into the A final and get a little bit of glory from their country. We're going to try to cover everything for you, from overall winners to class winners to potential surprises. I am Trey Stire, your host as always. Thank you for listening once again, wherever you may be listening from. Send this to your friends, to your family, to your fellow Moto fans. It's a big race. Some people might not be familiar with all of the competitors in this weekend's event, so we're going to try to run down everything as best as we can. And we have perspectives from both sides of the Atlantic today. First off, joining me as always, my usual co-host from the Dirt Bike Depot WMR KTM team, enjoying a little bit of time off, and I know he's really excited for this race because we've been talking it pretty much since this show has started. Jack Noel, what's up, man? It's finally here, Motocross of Nations time.
Yeah, I mean it's the Olympics of motocross, right? I mean it's the funnest one to watch in my head. It's guys kind of step up, and I think it provides some good entertainment, and to get the GP guys and the US guys kind of coming together, it's always good. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
Great to have you on as well. And speaking of great to have on, he filled in on episode 9 a few weeks ago, actually over a month ago. Time just flies by anymore. But he is back from Cult Moto, from DirtHub UK, a man who's actually going to be headed over to Motocross of Nations. He's covered the MXGP series pretty much all year. Edward Heather, welcome back to the Stire Sound, man, and we have a full perspective on the top competitors at Motocross of Nations. Thanks to you joining us. I know you're excited as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to be back on and talk about the biggest race of the year, everyone's favourite. Pretty cool. Obviously, I've been over in Europe watching our guys battle it out in 2 good championships, and you guys have been keeping a good eye on the American stuff. So I'm sure I can help you out, let you know some names on the entry list that you don't know, and talk about them. Hopefully, big them up, and yeah, hopefully we can see some Europeans mixing up in there as well.
Before we get into our full preview, I'm going to briefly run down the Motocross of Nations format and everything, because I feel like a lot of our listeners on the Stire Sound are hardcore motocross fans. They eat, sleep, breathe the sport of motocross, but we might have some listeners who might be a little unfamiliar with Motocross of Nations. So I'll briefly run things down this weekend. Friday is the first day of action. By action, there's not much going on. There's some start practice, a few laps being spun, the team parade, but perhaps the most important thing on Friday is the random draw for gate pick for Saturday's qualifying races. And there can be a lot of chaos in that. I know a couple years ago, I think it might have been Redbud in 2022, that I know Morocco got the #1 gate pick for the qualifying races a couple years ago, which threw a wrench into everybody's program. Like I mentioned, qualifying races, those take place on Saturday. One for the 3 classes. You have the MXGP qualifying race, 450 class, MX2 qualifying race, which is your 250 class, and then your open class, most likely a second 450 rider for pretty much every nation. You take your top 2 scores from the qualifying races. For example, if a country goes 2nd, 5th, and 8th in their qualifying races, the 2 and the 5 would say they would drop the 8 Olympic style scoring to determine gate pick for Sunday. The top 19 nations automatically transfer into Sunday, into the motos that count. And then there will be a B final on Sunday morning to determine the 20th and final country to qualify. And of course, gate pick, it will go by nations. You will have your top 20, and then the top 20 will pick again. And on Sunday, your three motos for all the marbles. Each class races twice. There will be an MXGP plus MX2 race. There will be an MX2 plus open race, and there will be an MXGP plus open race. Every class races twice. Every class races with each other. There will, of course, be 6 motos between the riders for every country. Once again, the worst score gets dropped. For example, if you have an all top 15 day, but for some reason a guy has a DNF in 37th, don't worry, that 37 is going to get dropped and you can still compete for the win. And up front, Olympic style scoring, like I said, it should be very interesting to watch this weekend. A lot of very competitive countries, but we're going to start with our team preview. The first couple countries, it will be pretty heavy with Jack and I, since mostly guys that compete in America, but of course we will go back and forth with every team. Starting things off, we're going to run down the order of the entry list in order of the way they finished last year. In my opinion, Team Australia are the heavy favorites to repeat and bring the Chamberlain Trophy back down under. You think about Australia, and of course, it's the same exact lineup as last year. You have Jet Lawrence in the MXGP class, fresh off of his second 450 Pro Motocross title and his third consecutive Super Motocross playoff title, the best in the world. Then you have Kyle Webster in the MX2 class, who was the missing piece for Australia in the last couple years. You think about 2022, they were on the podium, but Mitch Evans wasn't the missing piece. 2023 runner-ups, Dean Ferris didn't quite take him to the promised land. Then last year, Webster has a really solid day in the MX2 class. Of course, Kyle Webster is the 450 Australian motocross champion, usually a premier class guy, and he raced a few races over here in America this summer at the end of the season. And of course, in the open class, everybody's favorite bridesmaid, Hunter Lawrence. He's had an absolutely fantastic year, super consistent. I think he went on a crazy stretch there at the end of the season where it was just like two, 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 two. Of course, he got his first career overall win at Ironman finally. Apart from Washougal, I'm looking now at the results. The last 8 rounds of the year, apart from Washougal, he was either second or first. You have 2, 2, 2, 2, 4, 1, 2, 2. I mean, just an insane run. And of course, he had a shot to win the Super Motocross World Championship. Came up a little bit short, but no harm, no foul there. The Aussies, man, they're so good. You have, in my opinion, the best rider in the world, Jet Lawrence. You have Hunter Lawrence, who might not be the second best guy in the world in terms of pure speed when you think of guys like Kuhn, Geiser, Hurlings, even like Chase Sexton or Eli Tomac. But in terms of sheer consistency, Hunter Lawrence has been a machine throughout the summer. And of course, Kyle Webster, like I said, last year was the missing piece. And for those who might not be aware, Webster definitely has some speed as well. I know when I was at Budds Creek, I was watching Eli Tomac have absolute fits getting around Kyle Webster. It took him probably 3 or 4 laps to get around Webster. It was a pretty legit battle, pretty fun to watch. And I never went into the weekend expecting to see an Eli Tomac, Kyle Webster battle to the death for 8th place or whatever it was. But I'll go ahead and toss it over to you, Jack. Of course, we take for granted sometimes probably the fact that we are witnessing the Lawrence brothers, how dominant and how competitive they are. And I would have had Australia as the favorites going into Ironman before the events of the Las Vegas SMX. But now with Team USA's lineup being altered and potentially not finalized even, I feel like the Aussies are the clear favorites to repeat this year with as much success as on that team.
Of course, I mean, Jet and Hunter Lawrence definitely put their stamp on the American series as the two best guys in ending SMX, and I think even the outdoor series, it was Hunter was definitely like a podium guy every weekend, and Jet was obviously contending for the win every weekend. And every once in a while, you'd have Chase in the mix in there, but obviously that came to an end. So, and now Chase isn't racing for the U.S., and now it kind of leaves those two guys at the forefront. I think Jet goes and wins Moto 1. I think Hunter goes and wins Moto 2, and I think it's a Jet and Hunter podium of some sort in Moto 3. I think the ballast of how this team does is all on Kyle Webster. If he can go out there and get a top 10 finish, I think they win no problem, and I think they win easily. But if he does have a bad moto, two bad motos outside of the top 20, it does make it very tough for them because I don't think that they're strong enough at that 250 spot to be uber competitive against other nations. Like, I feel like the U.S. is very well rounded. I feel like Deegan will be really competitive on 250. I think RJ will be semi-competitive. I think he'll be around that 10 to so mark. But those just guys on the Australia side just have two so dominant 450 guys that are going to be inside the top three in both motos that they compete in. If Kyle can go out there and get a top 10, he'll make it really easy for Jet and Hunter to walk away with another MX Nations title.
Definitely going to be interesting to see if Webster can put in another strong performance. Of course, a ton of talent in the MX2 division, and we will get to all of those guys later. But Ed, really quick, of course, we've talked about in the episode that you were on, that was when Jet had just wrapped up his 450 title at Unadilla. And of course, he goes out the next weekend, wins again. Hunter Lawrence performing incredibly well. Team Australia, we were talking a little bit before Jack joined us, before we started the show, and you seem to agree with me that Team Australia is the heavy favorites to repeat once again. Why do you think Australia is so suited to going back to back, not just with the Lawrence brothers, but with Kyle Webster back in the fold?
Yeah, you guys touched on it quite well. I mean, if you lined up every open rider or MXGP rider against either Jet or Hunter, I think they have everyone covered. They're arguably the best two riders of current form in the world. And Carl Webster as well, like you said, really good, really strong. I think he'll be on a full factory bike as well, factory Honda. So the machine's not going to be a problem. He's going to have all the equipment and to be honest, with all the changes that's been happening and with America sort of being the heavy second favourites and all the things that have happened with them, I think Australia needs some bad luck really to sort of derail that. But at the end of the day, it is motocross. Things can happen, and this. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be interesting, but I don't really see anyone getting in between Jet or Hunter. And yeah, like Jack said, if Carl gets one top 10 result, I mean, the job's basically halfway done from that.
Next up, your runner-ups from a year ago, Team USA, and unfortunately, for the second year in a row, Team USA had to alter their lineup a bit. Our original crew would have been Chase Sexton in the MXGP class, Haiden Deegan, of course, on his 250 in the MX2 division, Eli Tomac in the open class. Now things have changed with Chase Sexton's really rough crash in Las Vegas and Deegan's crash of his own. We do have Eli Tomac set for the MXGP class. His final race for Star Racing and a tenure that has been fantastic. Of course, some injuries have marred it a little bit. He won both the Supercross and Motocross 450 class titles in his first year with Star in 2022. Also won Motocross of Nations in 2022, plus a bunch of other race wins for Eli. In the open class, to replace Chase Sexton, it will be somebody from the KTM group, but not a KTM. It will be RJ Hampshire aboard his Rockstar Energy Husqvarna. Of course, RJ, one of the breakout stars, in my opinion, of the year. It was always going to be the question of how well will he do when he moves up to the 450 class. And I thought he was going to be like a 6 to 10 guy this summer, and he exceeded my expectations. He got his first overall podium in Ironman, a really solid, really strong season, and he was battling with guys like Justin Cooper, like Ken Roxon, Cooper Webb. RJ looked really strong. Of course, fitness-wise, RJ usually really solid. I think he is a great choice to have in that open class, especially after how well he's been performing. And then the MX2 slot, of course, Haiden Deegan was the shoe-in for our pick, and I think he would have been the clear favorite for the MX2 class, or at least Himself and Kaido Wolf would have been the two favorites going into MX2, but of course Las Vegas happened. He goes down trying to take Joe Shimoda out, breaks his collarbone. He's about a week and a half or so, I believe, out of collarbone surgery, and he intends on racing. But rumor has it there could be a shootout at the Star Racing track today at the Goat Farm. We're recording this Monday afternoon between Deegan and Justin Cooper. Speaking of the Redbud 2022 team, Cooper was the MX2 guy for that lineup in Team USA's last win. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think that Cooper will suddenly upset Deegan and get him off the team. But of course, Deegan, fresh out of surgery. We talked earlier in the Stire Sound, I believe, episode 2 or 3. Of course, Jack, who works with the Dirt Bike Depot team, Jace Kessler was coming off a broken collarbone, and he was 3 days out of surgery and qualifying for the motos. So I don't think we'll be without Haiden Deegan. But the original lineup, I felt like we had a chance to win, but I was still kind of hesitant about them because of the inconsistencies. Tomac, still really solid, still a lot of speed, but you look at a round like Millville, and the guy was just off. It was a strange round for him. He was like eighth place all weekend, but he's also had some of those rounds up front where he was pressuring Jet Lawrence at Fox Raceway. He had a moto win at Hangtown. He looked really strong in the playoffs right there with the Lawrence brothers. Who knows what we'll get from Tomac? I just get Redbud 2018 flashbacks because how good the first lineup was on paper. And then I remember Tomac, Plessinger, Barsha should have been the favorites that year in Redbud and were and should have performed well, but we were just flat all year. Now with some team changes and of course Team Australia bringing back their lineup from a year ago, I feel like Team USA has a great chance to podium. I think we could be competitive. Maybe we could somehow sneak out a victory, but I just feel like Australia is the clear favorites now. Although Team USA could salvage a good result on home soil, but I know there's going to be a lot of red, white, and blue, a lot of stars and stripes in the crowd, hoping for more. Jack, of course, we have a seat either on our couch or at the track to witness the top racers from America. Of course, we wanted Chase to be able to compete, but RJ is a fantastic second option. I'm guessing it will be Haiden Deegan in the MX2 class, and of course, Tomac, who's basically a living legend, a guy who's won before. And of course, last year at Matterley Basin, Tomac put together a really strong final moto, led probably the first half of the race, ended up getting third, but Tomac was a huge reason Team USA climbed to the runner-up spot a year ago. What are your thoughts on this lineup? And truly, how well can Team USA do with all of the questions surrounding the organization now?
Yeah, so I kind of look back at like last year's scenario where we had Cooper Webb, Tomac, and Plessinger, a team that kind of got thrown together. Tomac was obviously really good. I think Tomac rises to the occasion. I think SMX he rose to the occasion. He knew what it was for. He did everything he could. He went past Hunter. I think he's that level of rider to be able to rise up and rise up in those scenarios where you need him to. You look at some of the outdoor races this year, if he just didn't have it, I don't think he really tried that hard. Or maybe that's him being old or whatever, knowing the championship's too far gone, whatever. But I think no matter what happens, I think Tomac's going to rise up to the occasion. I mean, you look at last year, MXDN Nations, he rode really, really well. And I think RJ, I think the same way. Like, I think RJ has the experience. I think him racing Ernay in 2023 was really good. And I think that if he can carry, it doesn't look too hard into the results and can get two top seven, top six finishes, you know, get a top five finish in my head. I think there's a real good chance that we could go into the final race with the real chance to win, So I think it's all gonna be about how Deegan does too. Like if Deegan is fully healthy or like at least somewhat 100%, like I don't think he'll be outside the top 10. If Deegan can drop the hammer for Moto 2 or whatever in the open class and can get like a top 8 or something like that, I think it really sets us up well for that last moto to be able to kind of be like, look, this is what we need to do. Do we only need to beat one Lawrence brother? Do we need to do this? Like, kind of hopefully that's in my head, that's how we as Team USA win that race. Is we have first two solid motos between Deegan and Tomac and RJ and Deegan, and then Tomac and RJ are able to kind of like, look, this is what we need to do, and we can game plan it kind of like we did in 2022, where we didn't really try to push too hard at the front. We just kind of let things happen the way they did. Like Chase said, I'm not going to go chase this guy. I don't need to pass him. There's no need to pass him. So, you can play it safe. I think that this team's going to be team smart. I think Deegan's going to just need to put in one really good moto. And I think if RJ can have two solid motos and stay inside that top eight, I think we do have a real chance of winning. And I think if we can steal a moto win or be on the podium for at least two, it'd be sick. So it's going to take some good motos. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be, it's not like in my head, it's not out of the question. That's the greatness of this sport. It's like we're not racing just against Jet Lawrence, we're not racing just against Hunter Lawrence. We're racing against Team Australia, who happens to have Kyle Webster on a 250. Like Ed said, he's going to be on the factory bike. He's going to be on the best equipment. But at the same time, we have Haiden Deegan, who's an absolute dog. So I'm excited to see how he does. I mean, I know with Jace how he raced Southwick after 3 days of collarbone surgery, and he went to some local guy in Detroit. Deegan's probably going to the best of the best. I'm sure he'll have plenty of recovery time. I just hope that he can go 30 minutes plus two with the collarbone. That's my only issue that I see potentially happening. But I think either way, I think we do have a chance. I just hope RJ. I think Tomac is going to step up. Don't get me wrong. I just hope RJ can keep it together for two motos, because I think both of his moto scores are going to count.
You bring up a great point about the fitness of Haiden Deegan, but he's always been so good at charging late in the motos. Of course, now a short recovery, but Haiden, I feel like, will be able to perform at a really high level despite the recent injury. Ed, we'll toss it over to you now. Of course, most of the guys in the MX2 class that Haiden will be competing against, you've been able to cover this year at MXGP. And a year ago, you had Kai DeWolf and Lucas Kuhnen battling for the title. And of course, Haiden won his first 250 outdoor title here in America. And this year, you expected it to be more of the same in both classes with Deegan and DeWolf dominating. But it was a lot of fluctuation in MX2 in Europe this year between guys like DeWolf, Sasha Kunin, Andrea Adamo. Of course, Langenfelder ends up winning the title, which in my eyes, I view it as Haiden Deegan. Since there was so much competitiveness and since there was so much fluctuation, I view Haiden Deegan as the clear number one 250 rider in the world currently. Even though he's coming out of surgery, Ed, where do you think he fits in with all of the MXGP guys? I know you got a glimpse of Haiden at San Diego earlier this year when you made a trip to America, and Eli Tomac for that matter. Of course, he had a great duel with Jet Lawrence that night. Where will Deegan stack up? And after the collarbone injury, after some of the controversy, do you think he's just going to show up there and put his head down, charge, but ride really smart to bring the victory home potentially for Team USA?
Well, I think the class of 250 riders or MX2 riders heading over is probably a bad time for Deegan to maybe not be 100%. There's four names at the top of my head that arguably could be in for a shout of winning the respective class. Sasha Kunin, DeWolf, Langenfelder, and Adamo. If Deegan was completely healthy, to be honest, it being in America, I wouldn't really see anyone mixing it up there with him. I just think he'd actually be probably contending against a lot of the MXGP and Open guys. But I think this makes it quite an even playing field. Deegan's big on sort of the ego side, and it's a lot of it's for the social presence. So I don't see this sort of derailing him too much. I think with a collarbone as well, when you get it plated, I could be wrong, but the strength of it is fine in a short period of time. It's more the pain. So if he can gut it out, which he's the sort of type to do that, I don't imagine him sort of flagging it in or giving it up. So if anyone to be on the MX2 sport, if Deegan can stay on there, I think he's going to give it 100% regardless. But like you guys touch on with Eli and RJ, I think they're quite solid. RJ will expect to bounce back when he raced in RNA. Not that he was awful, but I think he's better than what he showed there. And if you were going to lose Eli or Chase is probably, at this point of his career, better, but Eli's a bit more of a solid pick, sort of steer you through. He's been to however many nations. He's won with you guys. He's a podium. So I think he's a good one to sort of keep everything calm. You touched on the consistency as well, and I think that's a big factor. If they can go into that last race and, Webster's had a problem or maybe Jet Hunter had a problem and they're still in it purely from being in that top five, then, yeah, Deegan's done his job, and it's over to the two fit guys.
Next up on our list, the third place finishers from a year ago, and a team that I feel could give Team Australia some fits. I'm talking about Team Netherlands. Of course, that organization headlined by a pair of wily veterans who have a ton of experience at the Motocross of Nations and also have a ton of experience running up front at MXGP and contending. Of course, the team is headlined by Glenn Coldenhoff, who wrapped up potentially his final season of MXGP. He's raced in the premier class for a decade or so, but it was a great season for Glenn. Of course, he wasn't really in the championship hunt, but he got 6 overall podiums. He won a moto at Matterley Basin. Of course, Glenn, third overall in the championship standings, and he was really a 3 to 5 guy all year. There are some rounds that were a little bit off that mark, but you talk about a guy who has a wealth of experience winning races and competing. And this is a guy who has put in some of his best career rides at the Motocross of Nations. He has been lights out at times in the past. He is a two-time open class overall winner at the Motocross of Nations. He's been on the podium overall for Team Netherlands several times, and of course was a part of that 2019 Dutch winning team alongside Calvin Vlanderen, who will be the open class rider. Of course, Coldenhoff will be on his factory Fantic machine, Vlanderen on his factory Yamaha. It was a bit quiet this year for Vlanderen, but he still ended the year sixth in points. A nice year. He ended up getting a few podiums toward the end of the season, and of course, for him, Yamaha had a bit of a rough year, so it was great for him to be able to put in some really solid results at the end of the calendar. And of course, we can't forget about Kai de Wolf in the MX2 class, the 2024 MX2 world champion. He came up just a few points short this year on his nest on Husqvarna, but still a productive year from Kai. Looking through the results, I believe 7 overall victories. Of course, de Wolf known primarily as a really good sand rider. Usually all Dutch guys are incredible in the sand, but De Wolf has the experience competing on the big stage and 4 championships. He's not been able to win a Motocross of Nations event, but with the experience and the veteran qualities that guys like Coldenhoff and Vlanderen bring to the team, as well as the top end speed of De Wolf, I feel like the Dutch could potentially steal a victory this weekend. Obviously going to be very hard with how talented Australia and even Team USA is. But Ed, I'll send it over to you. There are rumors that Coldenhoff could potentially be interested in a ride here in America for the next couple years. Of course, it seems like he is done with MXGP. He's had a really solid career, never been a championship level guy, but as I mentioned, some race wins, a ton of podiums, of course, a lot of success in the past at Motocross of Nations. Of course, Vlanderen, I think back to Redbud 2018 when the Dutch should have smoked everybody. And of course, they ended up getting second overall because Vlanderen had a DNF. He took a rock to the eye in one of the motos. Of course, Redbud was wet that year. He had ditched his goggles. And then all of a sudden, that rock ended up halting the Dutch momentum, but they would rebound a year later on their home soil. And De Wolf, looking for his First Nations win. Ed, what are your prospects on the Dutch team? And do I have some backing with my thoughts that they could potentially get up there and steal a win, even though they're a little under the radar compared to everybody's favorites over here of Australia and Team America?
Yeah, for sure. Starting with Glenn, he's had a really solid season. I think it's his best season since 2019. Like you said, 6 podiums, a race win. He's been really good, and there's not many, if at all, sort of good enough options for him in MXGP for next season. So I think he's going to be quite motivated to put in a good ride, sign, get, seal a deal over there as well. I'm sure. Well, I know there's some things in the works for him, so there's some extra motivation, and it's a sort of a rider where, like you said, he's not a title guy. I would never back him to win a championship, but I would never be surprised if he pops up with a win just sporadically. On his day, he's as good as anyone, and this is kind of what this event's all about. And yeah, like you said, him in 2018 at Redbud was kind of like his sort of standout of his career so far. Vlaanderen, the start of the season was a little bit steady, a little bit slow. The halfway mark, I know he was dealing with some knee problems and he was getting it drained, a lot of fluid off his knee, but he got 3 podiums towards the end. He got 2 in a row as well, with Belgium and the round before, which is Lockett, I believe. And yeah, again, he's just really consistent, really solid. If you benchmarked him against the other team's open spots, I'd back Calvin against many as well. And Kai, he's going to be bitterly disappointed with how Australia ended, despite, he did absolutely everything he could. But I think he's sort of, I know Simon's there, but I think he's entering the weekend expecting himself and probably most expecting to win the MX2 class. So I think you've got every right in thinking they can mix it up. When one of your guys can win their class and the other two are as solid as a rock and will mix up in the top 5, I mean, yeah, they're certainly in for a shout. It's a very sneaky team.
Jack, one thing I forgot to mention before I'll send it over to you. Koldenhoff, it seemed like, was very good at starting this year. It seemed like he started a lot of motos up front, took a lot of hole shots, and starting at times can be very important in Motocross of Nations, especially if you have like an MX2, MXGP class moto where you have those 250 guys on the inside gate, trying to give them a little bit better start, having that starting ability, but with all the veteran presence and all the wins and podiums of Team Netherlands, what do you think it takes for the Netherlands to be able to beat a team with 2 usually incredibly consistent guys for Team Australia and, of course, Team USA, who will be extra motivated since it's on home soil?
Yeah, so Team Netherlands, I mean, they I'm kind of bummed that they don't have Hurlings racing. I think Hurlings at the end of the MXGP season was really kind of coming into form and had some really good rides. And I think if they had a guy like him, it's almost a difference maker for me in my head, like for that whole team, just the experience Hurlings has, and then the Wolf being really, really good. Obviously, Koldenhoff is a veteran, so tough to say how they'll do with Vlander in there. I think if Koldenhoff and DeWolf can both have good motos, and then Vlander can have a good moto, I think you're going to see DeWolf's 2 scores get taken, to be honest. I think Vlander is still a great rider, but I think he's going to struggle a little bit. But I think that they can definitely get a podium if they can get, Koldenhoff can have a moto inside the top 5, and then they can have, 4 other motos that are inside the top 10. They definitely have a good chance of being on the podium, or at least inside the top 5 in my head. But without Hurlings, I think it's going to be a struggle. But yeah, that's just my whole thing with it. I think if they want to be contenders, they have to be in the top 5. And if I think it's definitely possible for them to do that, it's just going to be tough with how stacked it is. Just and like with the other countries too, like you just have so many other countries like Latvia and Slovenia with Geisher and Jonas, those guys that are really, really good. That their countries aren't going to be the other guys in their country aren't going to be as good, but they still have really good riders that will kind of mix it up a little bit for the other countries. So I'm interested to see how everything goes with them. I definitely think they could be on the podium. It's just I think it's gonna take Vlander's gonna have to step up to the plate as well as Koldenhoff to kind of really have really, really good days for them to be on that podium. But we're in luck. We're gonna be introducing Team Spain. Team Spain's gonna have Ruben Fernandez, Guillem Ferez, and Francisco Garcia in the MX in the Open class. We are happily to be joined by Guillem Ferez of Triumph Racing in the Europe side. Guillem, how's it going? How's everything been for you, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Good, 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 man. It's cool to have you on. Our back to the United States for you. What are your thoughts on like the whole MX of Nations thing? I know you've done it before at Redbud, and you had a really breakout ride there, and it kind of put you on the map, not just here in America, but also in Europe, giving yourself a chance to kind of prove yourself over there. And you've kind of had a good end of the season, having some good motos here and there. And what are your thoughts coming back to America and being able to race the MX of Nations?
It's always nice to get to represent my country. It's gonna be my second time. I've already been in at Ironman before, so yeah, I'm quite excited. We have a pretty young team, but I think we're all really happy, really excited, and for sure, I know my teammates and we're gonna give it our best. Like you said, I ended up the season pretty strong. Was having some good rides, ran up front, led some laps. So yeah, I'm happy where I'm at, where's the bike at, and yeah, just excited, excited to come back to the US to race for my country and see what we can do.
So Ruben Fernandez is a clear guy in my head that's going to be a veteran. He's going to put in some solid motos. I think you as well. I think you have a good chance of with some familiarity compared to some of the other guys that are racing in the MX2 class. I think you have a really good opportunity to really prove yourself and kind of have two, some good motos. Francisco Garcia, I'm not very familiar with him. Like obviously, I don't think has he ever raced for Team Spain before, Guillem?
No, it's gonna be his first time. I think he just turned 18 now.
Wow. So an 18-year-old riding a 450, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, that kind of gives you like in a weird spot, right? Because you're a little bit older than him. But yeah. So I mean, I think for you guys definitely have the opportunity to get a top five and maybe even compete for a podium if you and Ruben and Francisco can have some good motos. But just kind of go through like the whole process of the selection on his side. I mean, I know Prado obviously would probably be the favorite to get that, but obviously his little stint here has been kind of disappointing, and obviously him and the whole team thing. But just you guys as a whole, have you guys talked a lot and been training together or anything like that, or you guys just come over here and just kind of meet each other for the first time in like a team spec aspect?
I mean, we see each other every weekend. Francisco has been racing the EMX 250 class. So I don't see him every single weekend, but I see him a lot. And he had also a really, really strong end of the season. He won the last three races in a row. He's also kind of a big guy. So, yeah, he's been riding 250. It's going to be his first time racing the 450. I think he had 2 weeks on the bike, but I think it suits him because, yeah, like I said before, he's a big guy. And yeah, he's strong. Really excited to go to the nations, and he's really happy. So I think he can surprise a lot of people. No one expects him. I think he's gonna be good on the 450.
How about yourself though, Gil? I mean, I know you've raced here before, and you've raced some of the guys. Pretty much everybody that's racing this race at some point, right? You've been around them, especially in the MX2 class. Where do you see yourself kind of falling among the MX2 riders? I mean, I know it's kind of like what are your goals and your expectations kind of going into this weekend?
We all know MXON is always hectic, but my goal is to be on the podium as an individual for the MX2 class, and obviously do my best for my country. But yeah, I had some good races at the end of the season, and I'm hungry for more. I've been feeling good lately, and yeah, Ironman is a track that I know. I raced in the US before, so I'm used to the tracks, and I think they suit me pretty good. And yeah, just really looking forward to go racing.
Sweet. Ed, do you have anything for Gillum?
No, I was going to ask about Garcia and how much time he's got on the bike, but I agree. I think he's going to be quite good. No expectations. He's a bigger guy. His style suits a 450, but no, I think Kim's going to be good as well. The American fans know him, and yeah, I think his Spain are quite good all round. Garcia are going to make some people maybe question it, but no, I think Spain are quite solid. A little bit underrated as well.
How about you, Trey?
First of all, I want to say thank you once again for joining our show here on episode 15 as we preview the Motocross of Nations. But my question for you, of course, you had some really strong runs here in America for Star Racing Yamaha. You put some really solid rides together, and it looked like you were going to break out, but some injuries, of course, Thunder Valley a couple years ago, you had a crash that took you out of action. You were starting to learn Supercross over here and putting in some solid rides, then got injured again. Moving back to Europe this year, of course, you get the Triumph factory seat. And apart from a couple races at the beginning of the year where you missed, you really put a whole year of racing together. A lot of really good highlights, some overall podiums. Of course, you got the Moto win in Germany earlier this year. How much confidence and do you think technique and ability that you've been able to build and to grow on since you've finally been able to put another full year of racing together after some starts and stops in the last couple years?
Yeah, that's definitely been a challenge, especially because after my last injury, it was a struggle. I've had three different surgeries, and I didn't even know if I would be able to ride again. But yeah, I ended up signing with Triumph. For me, it was a hard time in the US the last 2 seasons because I was completely alone, and getting injured and being by myself was a little tough. But that's why I decided to come back. But yeah, my main goal was to complete another full season. I feel Like, yeah, the last 2 years, I did maybe 4 races overall. So I was definitely missing a lot of racecraft, race rhythm. And also my last motocross race was Thunder Valley. That was in 2023. And yeah, it's been a while since I was behind the gate, but that was my main goal, you know. The team and I knew it was a year to build, and that's what have been slowly. Unfortunately, I had a little concussion, missed 3 rounds, but after that, I think it's just been a little step every weekend. So I'm happy with that.
Guillem, what would you say, like as a team wise, like what's the like your team manager, your goal, like as a team going into this weekend, like where would you like to see your team end up? Like what would be a positive result for you guys?
I think the good thing about Spain this year is that we have no expectations. So yeah, we everyone's gonna be happy if we just go out there and we do our best, you know. So I think it's gonna play a good role in our favor in the team because being young and Francisco on the 450, also no expectations. I think it's gonna be good for us, and I just think everyone's gonna be happy no matter what we do.
Well, Guillem, I really appreciate you joining us on the podcast, man. I miss you so much, dude. I miss you being back in Florida, and I hope you enjoy Ironman. And yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on and being a part of this podcast.
Miss you too, Jack. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Guillem Perez representing Monster Energy Triumph Racing in the MX2 class for Team Spain at the Motocross of Nations this weekend. Once again, thank you for joining and best of luck this weekend to him and to Team Spain, of course, as we mentioned. Team Honda HRC's Ruben Fernandez representing in the MXGP class and Francisco Garcia in the open class, a young teenager making his debut, going to be a big race for him and potentially a breakout ride if he performs well. With that wrapped up, we move on to a team that always seems to be in the forefront, always seems to be in the fight at Motocross of Nations. Of course, I am talking about Team France. They won 5 of these things in a row from 2014 to 2018, and one guy who helped him during that stretch is on the squad once again this year. Of course, they took the win 2 years ago at Ernée in 2023, and 2 out of those 3 riders will be back running for Team France this weekend. Of course, the headliner for the team, your now 2-time MXGP world champion, Romain Febvre from Kawasaki Racing Team, 10 years after winning the MXGP title as a rookie for Yamaha. He goes out there, puts together a really consistent, strong season, and gets the job done. There were only 4 rounds of the MXGP season, I believe 21 races altogether. Only 4 rounds where Febvre did not score an overall podium. He was incredibly consistent this year. 5 overall victories, including a very clutch victory at the MXGP of Sweden when his title rival Lucas Kunin was having some trouble. And you think about some of the greatest Motocross of Nations riders of all time, I think about Febvre being on that list because you look through his success in that event. He has 4 wins with Team France as a member representing that country. He also has an open class victory back in 2015, coincidentally, the year he won the championship. Of course, Febvre top end speed, I don't think he's going to be able to run with Jet Lawrence, with Tim Geiser, with Lucas Kunin. But you talk about racecraft, you talk about experience. Romain Febvre has been very clutch at the Motocross of Nations in the past. Joining him from that 2023 winning team, like I mentioned, is Maxime Renault, a guy who will be competing for Yamaha's factory organization. Of course, we covered his teammate Calvin Vlaanderen, who's competing for the Netherlands. Renault started the year really strong with a victory in Argentina, but things quickly came unraveled. He had some crashes, some bad luck, missed some action for a little bit. Overall, a very up and down year. It started off great, Renault holding the red plate, and then things fell apart a little bit. But another guy who has been very solid at the Motocross of Nations, I think back to 2022 when Team USA won and Eli Tomac had a really strong ride, but it was actually Maxime Renault who won the MXGP class that day ahead of Tomac with 3-1 scores, and Renault won the open class overall in Ernée the next year when France took the overall victory. So Renault has a lot of success at the Motocross of Nations previously, but the biggest question mark for Team France is their MX2 rider. Of course, Tom Vial has been their representative for many years in that division. Of course, a two-time MX2 world champion, a two-time 250 Supercross champion. Now Tom is moving on. Tom will be moving potentially, we think, to a 450 Honda ride next year in the MXGP series. But regardless, he's not competing at the Motocross of Nations this year. Instead, it is a rookie, Fevre's 250 teammate, Mathis Villan, competing for Team France. And it was kind of a standard rookie year for Villan. Nothing too crazy. He's top 10 overall in points. He did miss a few rounds toward the start of the season, so he was behind some of his competitors a little bit, and 10th might not be indicative of his true pace and true speed. But it was really the MXGP of the Czech Republic that he broke out. He won the qualifying race, then went 3-3 in the motos to score his first overall podium. Obviously, Team France, always one of the top contenders to perform well at the Motocross of Nations, given their success, especially in recent memories. Ed, you have a veteran like Fevre who has a ton of success at the event. Renault has experienced his fair share of success, but no Ferrandis, no Vial. Those two guys have really been the usual third guy for Team France. Of course, Marvin Musquin retired a few years ago, so it's not him either. Now a new face for Team France. Obviously, I think there's an outside shot that they could win, but at the same time, once again, you have Australia, USA, the Dutch. It's going to be hard for them, but Roman Febvre coming off a world championship, how motivated will he be to put Team France back on the top step of the podium and bring the Chamberlain Trophy back?
Yeah, I think Federer's going to be good. I think, Sid in the title, 10 years on from his first one. You touched on that. He won the Open Group in 2015, and things in Federer's career kind of seem to work a little bit oddly in that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did win his group now, knowing that and how things have worked out for him. But yeah, he's the whole of Team France. How usually you have two strong riders, and then there's been some years you throw on sort of Charlier or Jordi Tixier, and they can still win. So I'm not too concerned really with Valin. It's more for Maxime Renault. I know he's had a bit of a torrid time this year with bike setup, and he's not been very happy with it, alongside multiple surgeries and a lot of injuries. So how fired up he's going to be, I think he's a little bit over 2025. But on the flip side to that, speaking with him in Turkey, he also did, say to me he was looking forward to sort of being able to finish the season still on a high at the nation. So I'm not too sure with Renault, but Valiant, another sneaky guy. I feel like I've said that about at least one guy in every team so far, but he's really good. The injury at the beginning of the season sort of derailed him a little bit and derailed his momentum, but when he found his feet, he was really good. It was Finland when he sort of stood out for me the most, and then he backed up the following round with a podium and a quali win. And he's been in contention for a couple of podiums after that as well. Kawasaki teammate with Fevre as well, so it's going to be familiar setup for him. It's going to be kind of like a GP weekend in that sense. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about Valen. I think he's another one that's going to turn some heads. He's really good. He's an EMX 250 champion as well from 2024. And yeah, I'm more interested in see how Renault's going to do because I think he's a little bit over 2025, to be honest.
Jack, you can never count out Team France at the Motocross of Nations. What are your expectations for this Fevre Villan Renault lineup?
So unlike Ed, I think I speak very highly on Renault. I think Renault at Destinations is like a different rider. From what I've seen in years past, I mean, you look at Ernée, you look at 2022 Red Bud, he was dominant. He's really good. I think Valenne is, like Edward said, like he's very, very sneaky. Like I think he's kind of no expectations, but I think he could definitely sneak a top 15, top 10 even result in one of the motos, which would, if Feb and Renault can both get top threes, it catapults them into that winning category, right? I think a podium is definitely the expectation. I saw Gautier Paulin. He was at Ironman. Spoke with him a little bit, just on what they were thinking, and they said they think that they have a strong team. Even if Tom doesn't race, they were definitely trying to get Tom to go. But obviously, Valland, he's a young up and coming dude. I think a lot of these young 250 guys, like you look at Langenfelder at Erne a couple years ago, and just kind of how that can maybe catapult their career. And I think Valland is definitely somebody who it could do that for. I think he showed a lot of potential, a lot of raw speed, a lot of raw talent. But I think if Feb can just go out there and be consistent, I think he'll be solid. I think Feb will be a top 5 guy at the minimum. And I think if Renault can kind of show his designation's form of past, he'll be really good. And I think France will definitely have a good opportunity to be on that box. So yeah, they definitely aren't out of the question to win the race, but it definitely will be tough. I think if the 450 guys don't do what they need to do, they definitely won't be on the podium. I think they definitely have the ability to be on that box, and I think Valan's going to be good. I think Renault is going to be good. I think Feb's going to be good. So I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm excited to see just honestly the whole thing in general, just with everybody that's racing. So I think it'll be good. I think the expectations are lower than years past, but I think they definitely have the opportunity to kind of surprise some people and compete for some wins.
I feel like with Australia, USA, Netherlands, and now France covered, those are, in my opinion, the favorites or the four possible winners we could see this weekend. We're going to start going a little bit quicker through the teams. Definitely still some podium potential in the field. Starting with Germany, you have Ken Roczen, who might be the only Suzuki guy in the field. Showing through the entry list here, I believe he is. Of course, Kickstart Kenny, a member of the 2013, I believe it was, Germany winning team. Of course, aboard his Progressive Insurance X-Star Suzuki, coming off a fourth place finish in the SMX playoffs. The MX2 class, of course, you have Simon Langenfelder for Red Bull KTM Ducati Racing. Your brand new MX2 world champion, putting together a really strong, really solid season. As we mentioned, a lot of fluctuation in that class this year, but Langenfelder was strong throughout and walked away as a world champion. And Germany, to a lesser extent of Australia, has been one of those who's our third guy team because you've had Roczen and Langenfelder the last few years, but they've tried guys like Max Nagel, of course. In his prime, Nagel was a fantastic rider, but he is an older guy now. He's the veteran presence. You had Tom Cock on the team, and that went kind of up and down depending on the year he was performing for them. And now you have Maximilian Spies in the open class. I believe Becker Racing KTM is the organization he competes for. He, of course, is part-time in the MXGP series. He put together some decent rides, nothing crazy that will jump off the page. But I did hear yesterday that Spies is training in Florida, and he's apparently feeling very comfortable, very fast here in the States. Germany has some outside podium potential, in my opinion. I'll quickly get both of your opinions, starting with Ed, because he has witnessed Langenfelder's rise this year to becoming a world champion. If Spies puts together some great races and if Langenfelder runs to his potential and potentially gets the victory in the MX2 class, could we see the Germans sneak in a podium this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. Kenny and Simon, obviously, the really strong lineup. You touched on Nagel. If Germany had a prime Max Nagel, they'd be definitely a contention, maybe an outside shot of a win. But with Spies, he's like Deegan, like we were touching on. He needs to have one, and Webster, he needs to have one solid ride. Where he will stack up on like expectation wise, I don't really know. I think his best result this year is just inside the top 15. So it's going to be tough for him. However, if we can see him score inside the top 15, maybe towards more the top 12, get a good start and hold his position, then yeah, I think they can be an outside shot of a podium. I don't think a win's on the cards. I think that's holding them back a little bit with Speeds. But no, Simon's, to be honest, looking at it, I'm going to probably hedge towards, I think Simon might be the strongest German rider this year. I think he's going to be really good, and he's I think he wants to, show to everyone that he's the champion. He's the fastest 250 guy out there.
Jack, your predictions for Team Germany and where they'll stack up this weekend?
I don't know, man. I think Langenfelder will be good, but it's just tough when you have him racing against 450 guys. And I think with the addition of a couple extra MX2 guys that typically aren't in front of him, that I think will end up in front of him, like a Deegan. I think Harrop being raced in the US this year will be good. I think it'll be tough. I think he can still have a good ride. I think he could still finish inside the top 10 in a moto, but I think Kenny will be good. I just don't know how good. But yeah, it'll be tough, I think, for them to be inside that top five, especially for a podium. I think if they finish within the top seven, I think it'd be a good weekend for them. I think that's kind of where I see them finishing overall, just with the new guy, and then obviously Ken and Langenfelder. Just Langenfelder being probably their best guy, like Ed said, being on a 250 just puts them at a major disadvantage. I think it's going to be tough for them. So I think seventh or eighth place finish. I think for them, but I think if they can get a top five, they definitely have something to hang their hat on.
Jack mentioned earlier in the episode potential for wild cards to sneak in there, and perhaps no bigger wild card, a guy who always throws off some of the scoring. Looking at Team Slovenia now, Tim Geiser, your defending MXGP class winner at the Motocross of Nations, an epic duel in the second moto with Jet Lawrence a year ago, a fantastic end to the weekend. Of course, you have Jan Panzer in the open class on his privateer KTM. Panzer is always a really solid, really steady privateer in the MXGP series. I think he had a moto podium in the Czech Republic, a fantastic performance. But that's a team where you have the questions about some of the other third guys, but Slovenia really doesn't have an established third guy at all. They have Jaka Peklai in the MX2 class once again, and he was at the back of the pack pretty much for the MX2 series last year. He was not last, I don't believe, but he was definitely in the 16 through 20 range for his class. Slovenia, I don't think they have a chance for a podium. I believe last year's seventh place finish for them was their best in the history of the Motocross of Nations. Of course, Geiser, a living legend, a five-time world champion, could be Geiser's last race on a Honda as well, which will be interesting to watch. I'll just go to Ed for this one since he is able to witness Geiser and Panzer on a weekly basis. Is there a chance Geiser is able to sneak out a victory somehow, even though he is competing against guys like Jet Lawrence, like Fevra, like Glenn Coldenhoff, so many talented guys in the MXGP class. And after only a month or two back racing, after holding the red plate for a while, where does Geiser stack up? And how much will he be able to throw off some of these overall results and mix it up and spoil the party in the premier class?
His injury from Switzerland definitely threw his season back, and I think sort of where he would be at now. So if he didn't get injured, or if his injury wasn't as big, it was quite tough. And I know in his return, the main thing he's been dealing with is not the speed. He can run up there and in free practice and time practice, his times are good. It's just the sort of the arm pump and sort of the rust and not spinning any laps. But now I think he finished both or the final two rounds on the box, so he's back to fitness somewhat. Last year, who can forget his ride with Jet and the sort of the second to last corner pass? I think he will mix it up in the races, but I don't think he will hold on for a sort of first or second or third. I just don't think he's as sharp as the other guys, and I think they're sort of the momentum's with him and with Slovenia compared to say an Australia. Well, maybe this will play into his factor. There's no expectation for them to win, so Tim kind of treats it as it's like another race for him. He just kind of wants to win it personally for him. Jan's really good, solid guy. Unfortunately, Yaka is probably not the guy that they need to sort of catapult them towards inside the top five, but he trains with Tim. He's a good guy. He's young. I rate that he gets to as many rounds as he can in the MX2 class. And he slowly got better. His results have got better towards the end of the year. So I don't think there can be a podium threat, but I think Tim can mix up, or top five threat, but I think Tim can mix in there and at least separate some of the guys in the opening portion of the race to spread it out a little bit and make everyone else's job a little bit harder.
One team I do feel like has a chance at a podium, and I think they're a bit slept on heading into this event. Team Italy, Speaking of living legends, perhaps the most experienced rider in the world, a 9-time world champion, Antonio Cairoli, making his Motocross of Nations return, his first MXDN since 2022. Of course, Cairoli will be on an Aruba.it Ducati Corsa factory machine. Joining him in the MX2 class, it's the 2023 MX2 world champion, Andrea Adamo, on his Red Bull KTM, and another one of the Fantic factory team members, Andrea Bonacorsi, in the open class. And I think back to 2 years ago in Erne when Bonacorsi had perhaps his breakout performance. He was running top 10 in that open class, putting together some really solid rides, and that ended up putting him on the radar of Yamaha's factory MXGP team. Of course, Yago Geers went down with injury pretty early last season. They needed a guy to step up. They ended up promoting Bonacorsi from the MX2 squad, and he put in some solid results. And it was a really good year overall for Bonacorsi. I feel like he was one of the breakout guys. 8th in points, I believe, this year. A strong year. Of course, a lot of experience from Cairoli, and Adamo could be one of those guys. He has a bunch of overall wins in his career, of course, a former world champion. Adamo could be one of those guys to walk away with the overall victory in the MX2 class. Jack, I'll start with you. I know you had a front row seat to some of Cairoli's races here in America. Of course, he was on more of a stock production model for the Ducati, but I think there's a chance, I'm not going to say and guarantee that they're going to have a podium, but I think with that talent, with the way Adamo can perform at his best, and of course Bonacorsi's had a really good year, I think there's an outside shot that Italy could potentially sneak in a podium, and I feel like they aren't being talked about enough.
They definitely have a solid team. I think Baron Caroli, and I think Caroli actually showed himself a little bit. I think he did really well in America. His Redbud first moto at least was really good. I think his second moto got cut a little bit short, but yeah, no, he had a good showing for the overall perspective of things. I think he had a lot of time testing over here in America, which is good. And I think for the whole Team Italy as a whole, I think it'll be tough for them to get a podium. I think if they're all really, really good, I think if Caroli somehow manages to get a top five finish in Moto, they have an outside chance. I just don't see it happening. I don't think or the guy on the Fantic, I don't want to butcher his last name. Um, I don't think he'll be that good. I really think if he's lucky, he'll be a top 10 guy. So I think it's going to be really tough for anybody. I think that just how strong Australia is, how strong the U.S. is, how strong other teams like Netherlands and France and things like that are, and just kind of the screwballs you kind of have in there with some other countries. It's going to be tough for those guys to get good results, and I think they definitely have a chance to be in the top five, but I don't know if a podium is going to be possible for them this year.
Ed, moving on to you now. You've been able to watch Adamo and Bonacorsi a bit closer than we have. And of course, Cairoli, he had a solid ride at the MXGP of Great Britain as well during his one-off. I know he had another round earlier in the year as well. But Team Italy, of course, Italy brought home the victory in 2021 a few years ago. Cairoli, we know his career is winding down. He hasn't been full-time in a few years, but it's a living legend, a guy with perhaps the most experience out of anyone in the field, plus Adamo, a former world champion. What are your thoughts on Team Italy this year and their lineup?
I think the team's really strong. It's quite hard to sort of for me to sort of benchmark or bench race where I think they can go because Crowley, for me, there's just the nostalgia. He's a legend, like you said. That's more speaking for me, where I think, yeah, he's going to run up inside sort of the top eight. But then, if you weigh it out of all the factors, I think that's a little bit unrealistic to expect him sort of carry Italy through. So then you look at Bonacorsi, whose results this year were strong at the start of the season with everyone healthy. A lot of guys got injured. He still had strong results, and at the end of the season, when everyone was back and Hurley is winning races and everyone's sort of back to form and fitness, he still held a sort of a solid fringe top five, podium threat. So I think Bonacorsi is going to be solid, and same with Adamo. And now with Adamo this year, for me, he's arguably been the fastest he's ever been. I know he was a former world champion, but arguably in many aspects, I think this season was better for him than the title year, if that makes sense. I think he never really sort of shown through or shone through as someone that could sort of win a Grand Prix. And there's been multiple weekends where he's been the fastest guy outright. So I think he could be in contention in the MX2 class and against the 450s, and Bonacorsi as well is going to be up there. But with Crowley, I'm really torn. I don't really know what we're going to get out of him. But one thing that definitely helps is the experience. And yes, out of any of the Italians, he sure knows his way around nations and a motocross race.
I'm going to go quick through the next four countries, definite A final teams. Some of them have the potential to maybe sneak in the top five, but otherwise, I don't think they're going to put together incredible results per se, but they'll definitely be in the mix. Switzerland, I think, has a outside chance of a top five. They have two really solid, really veteran riders. Of course, Jeremy Seewer, another Ducati rider representing in the MXGP class. Valentin Guillem, fresh off an appearance in the SMX playoffs for Rock River Yamaha in the open class. A bit of new blood on the Switzerland team this year. Traditionally, Arno Tonis has been the third guy, and they have put together some combination of those three men. But Tonis not competing this year. Instead, it is a young racer. Nico Groitman is competing this year. He competes for the Cat Motors Bauer Schmidt Husqvarna team. Looking through his results a little bit, he competes in the EMX 250 Championship. And the one MX2 race he did compete in, he got 11th overall at Lommel, which is a pretty solid result, a very tough track to compete at. And 11th in your MX2 debut, I think, is a very solid ride. It will be interesting to see what Switzerland does, and it's cool to see them have a bit of youth on the team. Obviously, still awesome to see the Seawer and Gio combination. Then you look at Latvia, you have the Rezialis brothers, Carlos, who is full-time usually in the MX2 class for Factory Yamaha. He is now in the MXGP class for this weekend on a 450. His younger brother Giannis in the MX2 class for Yamaha. Of course, Giannis has been competing in the MX or the EMX 250 series, excuse me. Of course, the stepping stone to the MX2 class, and Giannis, I believe, was the champion this year. So he has put together a lot of strong results. He could be one to potentially surprise in the MX2 class, one of those young guys that a lot of people really haven't heard of, but could make noise. And of course, Latvia's headliner, the former MX2 world champion, Pauls Jonas, aboard his factory Kawasaki in the open class. Talk about more wild cards and spoilers. I think of Team Denmark. Jack mentioned him a bit earlier. Mikkel Harup, after a really strong season here in America in the 250 class. Of course, Harup will be aboard his factory Triumph and potentially playing spoiler in that division. Joining him, it's three 250 riders across the board for the team, so it would be interesting to see the other guys adapting to the 450s. You have Magnus Smith, who competed throughout the year in the MXGP class. And then you have Mads Fredso, another EMX 250 rider, I believe. Fredso had some up and down results this year, but another guy who made his MX2 debut this year, he was 15th overall in his debut in Germany. He went 18-13 for 15th overall. Fredso was on the same Husqvarna team, the Cat Motors crew that Nico Groitman competes for as well. And then Team UK, of course, Ed, I'm sure, will be cheering for Team Great Britain this weekend, even though, we're supposed to stay impartial, but hey, man, country pride on the line. Representing the UK this year, flying the flag, flying the Union Jack, Conrad Muse in the MXGP class, no surprise there. Muse has been the top guy in the British motocross scene the last few years. You have Dylan Walsh actually appearing for Great Britain in the MX2 class, utilizing his dual citizenship. Walsh competed for New Zealand before at the event, but this year representing Team UK. Of course, Dylan, a regular in the 250 West Supercross division over here in America. He competed for the host Grindstone Freezing Group Kawasaki team and then raced in the summer in the Canadian Motocross Championship. And in the open class, you have from MRT Racing, Beta, the Watson wagon is headed to Ironman, Ben Watson. So those four teams, a potential for solid results, probably not going to compete for the podium, maybe outside chance top five for a team like Switzerland, but I want to send it over to Ed first. Out of those teams, who do you think could potentially make the most noise? And of course, you are from the United Kingdom. You are going to be keeping a close eye on Team Great Britain. So what is your expectation for the Union Jack crew this weekend?
I think out of them four, Latvia probably have the best shot for, the best result. I think top five is a little bit far fetched, but they can be in contention for it. The two Razulis brothers, the younger, it's similar to Jet and Hunter. The younger brothers, he's better, or he's got a higher ceiling, let's say. And he's a former EMX 125 champion. He was picked to be the EMX champion last year, but he injured his knee. So it's all the winning that he does is quite expected of him. I think he's going to be really, really good. And you said it earlier as well. I think he's going to surprise a few. The older brother, Carlos, I'm not too sure how he's going to do on the 450. Every weekend I've ever watched a race, it feels like he starts around 8th and will finish anywhere between 8th to 11th. Like that's like every single weekend, any single track. So maybe he's quite comfortable on the 450 and he can sort of just put two steady results together. And the former MX2 world champion, Paul Jonas, he's back from injury. He's actually had quite a solid year when he's been racing. His results have been quite strong. And he's quite steady. And in terms of Great Britain, well, when Ben Watson wasn't supposed to be racing, he's not racing now. We have got Lexa MX's Josh Gilbert, who raced most of the European MXGP rounds this year. So he's in place of him. He got third in the British Championship this year overall as well. And I think some American fans might remember when he raced previously in America back in 22, he did like 5 or 6 nationals. So he's raced Ironman before. Out of all the results or races that he raced back in America, Ironman was his best result with a 12th. So again, bit of a coin toss with Josh. I think he's on his day he can be strong, but it was a little bit last minute him even knowing he's getting here. Dylan Walsh, bit weird. He's on the team, but it's been rumored for multiple years that he's going to be riding for us, or like he's in contention for riding for us. And I'm quite happy we haven't drugged Tommy Sale back over here and made him race again, to be honest, because we need some sort of a new foundation of a team. And Walshy's really good, really talented. I think anyone who can come over here and sort of race the Canadian series for a summer, then come over to Britain and win a round and then go to America. I mean, he can adapt to anything, and he's racing Australia as well. And I know he's got a bike sent over from the guys, the KTM guys over there to ride and practice on already. And Conrad Muse is like the biggest anomaly sort of in English motocross. Talent-wise, I genuinely think he could be inside sort of the top 7 out of all the 450 guys, top 5. But it's never straightforward with Conrad. So if Conrad can sort of lead the guys and start qualifying well like he did last year, I think we could be on for top 8 maybe. But I don't really have too many high hopes. I just hope we have a few strong rides across the races, to be honest.
I apologize. I feel like I did hear that Gilbert was on the team, but looking at the entry list, I saw Ben Watson's name, so I immediately thought that he was on the team. Jack, I'll send it over to you for these 4 teams we just covered from Switzerland, Latvia, Denmark, Great Britain. Some guys that could potentially put in some really solid rides. Of course, you have the veteran experience of Seawer and Guillem for Team Switzerland. Of course, Jonas, a former world champion for Team Latvia. Mikkel Harup, a guy I know you're pretty excited about getting to watch this weekend. Who's on your radar from those 4 teams, Jack?
I think I have to agree with Ed here. I think Latvia is going to be good. I think they have some good youth coming up with those 2 brothers, and then Paul Jonas is obviously really solid, and I think he has the ability to kind of contend for top 5s in the 450 class this weekend. So I think they're going to be the team that will probably finish the best overall out of the 4 teams we just named. I think, like I said, Harrop will be good. But yeah, it'll be tough, I think, for any of those teams to get inside the top 5. I think top 8 for any of those teams is probably going to be solid. I think there's just so many teams. We haven't even covered Belgium yet. So Belgium, another one too. I think that'll be good. I mean, hopefully we talk about them a little bit. But yeah, no, I think Latvia will definitely be the best. It's definitely tough to say how any of these teams will do just because it's all about who shows up on Sunday. So we'll see. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Getting a bit deeper down the entry list, still in the teams that qualified for last year's event. Team Brazil really surprised me a lot last year. Of course, Enzo Lopes put together a fantastic ride in the MXGP class. Of course, Enzo was working his way back from injury, missed all of the Supercross season last year with some nerve issues, but he is back. He performed pretty solid in Supercross this year, nothing crazy. Battled for the Brazilian Arena Cross Championship, came up a little bit short against Dean Wilson, but Lope's the big headliner on that team. Joining him are Bernardo Tiburcio and Fabio Santos. Then you have Team Canada. Interestingly enough, the two champions from Canada this year were Americans, so no title winners on that team, but you do have a former champion in Jess Pettis headlining the squad on the MX-101 Yamaha. His 250 teammate Sebastian Racine is competing as well. And in the open class, a guy who really broke out up in Canada this year, Tanner Ward, who will be one of the few riders in the series this year, or in the field this year, to be competing aboard a gas. Of course, Ward was the runner-up in the 450 class up in Canada this year. But there are some other teams that I think have really solid lineups. I think it might be a challenge for Canada to qualify for the A final this year, honestly. I don't think it's their best lineup. I would have much rather had Dylan Rimple on the MX2 machine if I was Team Canada. Personally, Rimple got his first career overall win, a guy who just turned full-time pro pretty much. He's a teenager. I think he has a lot more potential for better results than Racine would. And of course, Pettis, in terms of speed, in terms of sheer ability, I don't think he's on Dylan Wright's level. But of course, those two had a big feud this year in Canada. So only one of them is on the team, and that would be Jess Pettis. Moving on, as Jack mentioned, they're a bit further down the order because of a Lucas Kuhn DNF last year that really took them out of contention. But the final team I think that could have podium potential, the true wild card team of this year's event, is Team Belgium, because you look at some of these other lineups like Switzerland. Of course, they have a young guy in the MX2 class, but they have all this experience from Sewer and Guillem. You look at the Dutch team that has an incredible amount of experience. Then you look at Team Belgium, and I think Liam Everts is the old man of the team, and he's only 22, 23 years old. 21, actually. I was wrong on that. August 6, 2004. 21 years old, Liam Everts is the old man of Team Belgium. But you have Lucas Kuhn, fresh off of his rookie season in the MXGP World Championship, second in points. He was competing with Roman Febvre, of course, ended up losing some ground late in the year and lost the championship, but a lot of fantastic performances from him. His brother Sasha in the MX2 class. He's going to be the true wild card of anyone this weekend because Sasha has so much speed, so much natural talent, but it seems like he is a dirt magnet and always ends up hitting the ground. And in the open class, like I mentioned, Liam Everts, the third generation racer aboard his nest on Husqvarna. Of course, Liam is an MX2 guy, but he has experience in the open class at Motocross of Nations, so I feel like he could be a solid hand for Team Belgium. This is the ultimate wild card team. Jack, you mentioned him a few minutes ago. So much youth on this team, but also a ton of talent between the Coonan brothers and Liam Everts. Where is Belgium going to shake out this weekend? And will this youth movement hurt them in terms of having all of these experienced guys for other teams? Or could it help them be able to go up there and take the fight with some of the older racers in each class?
Yeah, so I think with them it's going to be. I think the problem is with like you said, like the youth movement, they don't have a whole lot of veteran direction. I think like sometimes they get caught up in the moment or something like that, where it just they have a good race. They let's say Coonan goes out there and wins Moto 1, Moto 3 ain't going to be the same. I think one of those three guys are going to go out there and I think all three will have a good moto, but their other moto will be the downfall. um, so yeah, I don't see them being on the podium, but I definitely see them being a almost like a. It's kind of weird because like every single class they have a good dude, but just how good will they be? Not sure when it comes to overall perspective. I think it'll be good. I think they'll be fast. They'll be up at the front, but I think things will go wrong for them just with their inexperience and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think they definitely have the ability to get in the top five.
Ed, you have been covering MXGP all year. I know you've interviewed guys like Lucas Coonan. You've been able to watch, especially Lucas's progress in his maiden year on a 450. Sasha, of course, very fast but crash prone is his issue. And I think people forget that Liam Everts actually held the red plate in the early stages of the season in the MX2 class. He was looking really good. Of course, Langenfelder and DeWolf ended up getting around him, and he missed a couple rounds, I believe, with injury later in the year. I know he had a really rough crash in Finland, but this Belgium team, I feel like, are the ultimate wild cards of the weekend because it isn't like some of these teams where one guy is playing spoiler. You have three legit, very talented racers, but they're all very young and still rising through the ranks, gaining experience.
Yeah, I think arguably they have the best like talent distribution across the three classes, but again, the youth could be their biggest downfall. Lucas doesn't ride like a sort of an 18-year-old rookie. It's quite you have to remind yourself when you've been watching him this season that it's his first time, one, in the premier class, and two, being in such a title fight with the last year with the Wolf, he was kind of just winning out, and he never really got them points like he did this year, that close at any point. So I'm more interested to see how Lucas stacks up against sort of Eli, Jet, and Hunter and guys like that, because ultimately I think he's the biggest shining light in Europe coming through. He's really, really talented. I don't want to speak too soon, but I expect him to mix it up in there and run with them guys at least. He's really good, and I don't have any doubts that he won't keep it on two wheels. Stasha, however, I mean, I'm almost guaranteed to put money on that or if I could put money on that, he's going to pull a whole shot, even against 450s, run away or be in the top three, and then the camera pans to him. He's on the downside of a jump, bike's facing another way, and he's somehow okay. So if Sasha keeps on two wheels, I honestly think they could be in contention or quite a firm podium contender and maybe an outside shot for win. But I don't think that will be happening, because if he did that, he'd probably be an MX2 world champion as well. And Liam, his style definitely best suits a bigger machine. I think it'll allow him to, everyone knows a 250 override it a lot, and you've got to be very aggressive to get a lot out of it. And Liam's like his dad; he's sort of just smooth and steady, and you don't hear his bike screaming when he's coming past pit lane. So I think Liam's going to be really good. You touched on that he had the red plate as well at the beginning of the season, which is right, and he also the back end of last year in China had an awful crash. It was really scary with his injury. It was, all up in the air. So for him to even be racing this year, be in contention for wins like he was, and he petered off a little bit. And in Finland, where it looked like he come back to be sort of a winner again and be contending, he was running away with a qualifying win, and then he had a massive crash that put him back. But yeah, I think Liam's going to be solid. I think Lucas could win the class or win his class, and I think Sasha might let them down a little bit, to be honest. But yeah, in years to come, if they can keep this team healthy, they're going to be a serious contender, because that's a lot of talent.
We are going to now run through the rest of the nation. Still a lot of nations to cover, but just going to briefly talk about them. And you guys can feel free to jump in if you guys have any thoughts about these teams. Of course, a few more nations I feel like are definitely a final caliber. Starting with Team Norway, you have Hakon Osterhagen, you have Pell Gunderson in the MX2 class, and then Hakon Fredriksson, who put together a really strong ride. I believe it was Lommel. He's top 10 overall. He didn't have a bunch of MXGP races this year that he competed in, but man, when he did show up, he put together some really strong, really impressive rides. I think Norway is definitely an A final team. Interesting to see no Kevin Horgmo, Cornelius Tondell. Of course, those guys have been injured some, and those two seem to be the cornerstones of Team Norway. But Osterhagen and Fredriksson both have competed at Motocross of Nations before. Of course, Osterhagen, I remember seeing a bunch of clips on him at Redbud in 2022. He was on a Fantic two-stroke, and that thing was just singing around the track. Looking at South Africa, you have a lot of familiar faces for Americans, especially if you keep up with the privateers. It was supposed to be Tristan Purdon in the MXGP class. Unfortunately, he got hurt pretty big at one of the British Championship rounds and injured his leg. Slade Smith is his replacement, and some might remember Slade Smith from scoring some points a couple years ago when he was competing for the Rides Unlimited KTM team in America. Of course, Camden McClellan is going to be one of those spoiler guys in the MX2 class. McClellan, a few moto wins, a lot of podiums, a really strong season for McClellan, another one of the factory triumph riders. He is, of course, competing for South Africa. And then rounding out the team is Cameron Duro, who has spent a lot of time here in America over the last couple years, a South African motocross champion. It'll be interesting to see that team, but I feel like they're definitely a final contenders, especially McClellan on that team. He could really get up there and mix it up in the front of the MX2 class because he has battled with guys like DeWolf, Koonin, Langenfelder, Adamo, Ferez, Valan all season long. Looking down a bit further, Team Estonia is here, and for the first time in maybe 25 years or so, no Tanel Layoc, no Gert Krestenov. That duo has dominated Team Estonia. Of course, Harry Kulis in there as well, but Layoc not there on the team this year. Of course, he is older now, entering the twilight of his career. You have Jorgen Talviku in the MXGP class. He has moved up to the 450 division, another guy who has competed some in America the last few years, put together some solid results in the 250 class, but now in the MXGP class, you have Josip Parn. I don't know if I'm saying that name right, but the new face for Team Estonia in the MX2 class. He is aboard a gas. And of course, you have Harry Kulis, who just completed his first full year, his second year of pro motocross in America. Harry competed for the MRP SBR Husqvarna team, but interestingly enough, listed as a Yamaha rider on the entry list that I am looking at. Moving on to Team Austria, could be an A final team, but I could also see this team missing out. You have Pascal Rauchenecker in the MXGP class, Maximilian Emecker, who I'm not really familiar with at all, to be honest, in the MX2 class. And you have Marcel Stouffer in the open class. And Marcel scored some points in his select MXGP races this year. I feel like he will be the leader of that team. You talk about Stouffer, 38 points this year scored in MXGP, and he was 11th overall in Trentino at Pietramarata in Italy. A nice 11-13 day for 11th overall, and he was actually ahead of guys like Vlanderen and Bonacorsi and Seawer in the overall results. So Marcel Stouffer could help Team Austria qualify. Team Sweden, I think Isaac Gifting could mix it up in the MXGP class. I don't think he's going to do anything incredible, but of course he had his absolutely heroic ride at Uddevalla, the MXGP of Sweden earlier this year. Joining Gifting on his JK Racing Yamaha, you have Albin Gerhardsson in the MX2 class, Anton Goal in the open class. Team Ireland's back, of course. Martin Barr, who seems like he's been racing Motocross of Nations since the dawn of time. Glenn McCormick on the MX2 bike. Stuart Edmonds in the open class, but I believe one of those guys was injured and they had to have a replacement. Ed might know a little bit more about that. Who would be the replacement for Team Ireland? I feel like I've seen a name, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm trying to think. I think you are right. There's been a change, but I honestly have no idea. I just know that Martin Barr, he's ending his career this year. It's like you said, it's been a long career, so it's his last nations to try and get Ireland into a final. But the only rider that's popping into my head that could swap out for Ireland is Cole McCulloch. But there's been a lot of things behind the scenes which definitely wouldn't put him back in there. Now I'm thinking about it, so I don't actually know who would be swapping them out if they've had to replace someone.
Venezuela could be a team to sneak into the A final. Two guys very familiar to Americans, especially if you follow privateers. You have Anthony Rodriguez in the MXGP class, a guy with a ton of experience, and another guy with a lot of experience in the open class, Lorenzo Lacurcio. He's the team owner and rider for Wildcat Race Team. Carlos Badiali joining them in the MX2 class. Team Finland could be an A final lineup. Harry Haavisto, Casimir Henderson, and Sampo Rainio for Team Finland. Rainio, I believe, one of only two, or actually the only beta guy in the field with Ben Watson out now. So cool to see some representation from the Italian manufacturer.
Two stroke as well.
That will be fun to watch. Love hearing two strokes of Motocross of Nations. Now, Team Japan, we mentioned them very early on in the Stire Sound. Of course, Joe Shimoda, fresh off of playoff championship, fresh off some fantastic races this year. Unadilla, he had a really dominant performance, a couple other overall wins. But the other guys joining him, you have Yuki Okura in the MXGP class, Soya Nakajima in MX2, Joe's first race on a 450, which will be interesting to see. I don't necessarily know if Team Japan will qualify. It will be interesting to see how Shimoda stacks up against guys like Hunter Lawrence, like RJ Hampshire, Calvin Vlanderen, Maxime Renault, Andrea Bonacorsi, even guys like Paul Jonas, like Gio, Liam Everts. It would be very interesting to see how Shimoda shakes out, but I think with those 450 regular guys, Shimoda is going to put in some solid results, but I think Okura and Nakajima will hold Japan back, and they could make the A final, but I'm not really sold on their chances. Chile is another team that could make the A final, and then I'll briefly just breeze through the rest of the field. But Chile, of course, Hardy Munoz is the big name on that team. He had his career best Supercross season this year in the 250 East Series. Hardy will be in the open class, joining him Matias Pavez and Benjamin Garib. And then quickly through the rest of the field, I'm going to shout out every team. There's 38 teams. Not all of these guys will be competing for a chance in the A final, but you know what? They are representing their countries on the big stage. I believe they deserve a shout out. Starting with FIM Latin America, of course, there's a couple FIM teams for some nations who might not be able to make the trip. Representing that team, you have Franklin Noguera from the Dominican Republic, Miguel Rojas, I believe also Chilean. It looked like he had a Chilean license on the entry list at least. Or wait, no, it's actually CFM instead of FMC. So not sure what nation he could be representing. Possibly Costa Rica, maybe. And then you have Marco Antezana from Bolivia. Further down the list, you have FIM Asia making an appearance. You have Ben Holgren in the MXGP class, Giraj Wanalak, who I believe both of those are from Thailand. And then you have Roel Matthias Mango Song from, I believe, the Philippines, representing an MX2. A lot of racers competing from overseas. Then some of the other lineups. You have Iceland, C Final Warriors, usually Iceland. You have Ingvar Einarsson, Eric Gudmundsson, Eider Palmersson representing Iceland. Argentina is competing this year with the Poli brothers. Joaquin and Augustine usually make appearances at the Argentinian MXGP round earlier in the year, and they are joined by Felipe Quirno Costa. For Puerto Rico, there is a Puerto Rican team once again, but not a team that contains any American riders. The last Puerto Rican team we had, I believe, was 2023. Of course, Jack Chambers was on that team. And I think back in the past, guys like Zach Osborne would have been on Team Puerto Rico. Darian Sinai and Marshall Welton have spent time for Team Puerto Rico. I think Alex Martin even raced for them in the past. But it is a full, true Puerto Rican lineup with Sebastian Velez, Ivan Aladama Jr., and Rodney Gonzalez. Uruguay is making their first appearance this weekend, I believe since 1999 in the race. Cool to see Uruguay back. You have Nicolas Rolando, and then you have Alfonso and Herman Baracci. Team Morocco is there. I mentioned them earlier in the show, talking about how they got first gate pick a couple years ago. Saad Suleimani is a regular in MX2 in the MXGP series. He gets some points from time to time. He will be joined by Noam Jayal and Els Poget. Team Israel is there with Ophir Jamak, Stav Orland, who of course Jack and I have been watching, and we had Stav on episode 10. Go back in the archives and check that out if you want to learn about the dual citizen from Uganda and Israel representing things in the MX2 class, and Ben Almagor. Then Team Ecuador, Andres Benanala, Pedro Jose Suarez Jaramillo, and then we have Jetro Salazar. Team Ukraine is back with Yurly Nomchek, Maxim. There are so many letters in this name. I'm not sure exactly what they say. Rossachuk. Sorry, I'm not good with Ukrainian names. And then I believe Mykola Kubechko in the open class. Then Mexico is back. Team Mexico is competing. Jason Rubalcava in MXGP, Jorge Rubalcava in Open. Then we have Eric Vasquez Diaz in MX2. Then rounding out the field for Team Costa Rica, Yerad Vargas, Abraham Alfaro, and Jose Pablo Chavez. And for Team Honduras, your final team on the entry list, Jose Reyes, Gerhard Matamoros, who does compete here in America on a regular basis, and Fabio Hernandez Zelaya. Those are your 38 nations competing at the Motocross of Nations Ironman Raceway this weekend. I know it's a bit of a longer episode for you all to listen to, but we wanted to make sure every single nation was covered, even if we were just reading off their names. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Let's end it like we always do with predictions. This will be our final predictions of year one of the Stire Sound. And unfortunately for Jack, I gained a lot of ground in Las Vegas. You look at our predictions. I nailed the top two from the 450 class. That was part of my gain in points. I had Jet Lawrence winning ahead of Hunter Lawrence. Jack had the opposite order. He had Hunter ahead of Jet. I gained some points there. I also had Seth Hamaker in second compared to Jack, who had Seth in first. Neither one of us got our random picks from Vegas. I had Joey Savacci and Daxton Bennick for 11th. Jack had Dylan Ferrandis and Ty Masterpool. The actual 11th place finishers, for those who are wondering, were Shane McElrath and Cullen Park. We also predicted the Darwin MXGP round. I am the only one who nailed actual positions. I had Geiser third in the MXGP class, and I had DeWolf winning MX2. Jack was close to a couple of them. He had Geiser in second. He had Hurlings on the podium, but not quite winning. And I do have a pretty decent points gap. I believe 35 points somehow. I opened up on Jack at the very end. But we are going to be predicting the overall winners for each class, as well as the nation podium for the end of Motocross of Nations. And I'm going to start with Ed since he's our guest. His will not count for our points. Of course, Ed's episode 9 predictions counted for Jack since he was absent. But we'll start with Ed. You're making the trip over this weekend. First, give us your individual class overall winners before you give us your overall country predictions.
Well, starting off with the obvious one, I think Jet is going to win the MXGP class. The Open class, I'm torn. I don't know whether to back Hunter. I don't think. No, not Hunter. No, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go with, go with Jet for MXGP. We're going to go against what I say. I'm going to feel like Renault's going to surprise a few. I'm just looking at the names now. Renault for the Open class. And then MX2, I'm going to go with DeWolf. I think DeWolf going to go there, win their class. And then for countries, I keep changing in my mind, but I'm going to go with what I really think and what I've thought from sort of the beginning. Australia winning it. I think America will come second, and then France in third.
I'm gonna kind of tail what Ed said. I think Jet's gonna win the Open, or not the Open class, the MXGP class. I think that Renault's gonna win the Open class, and then the MX2, I'm gonna go Deegan. I think Deegan will be okay. I think he's ridden there before. I think he'll be good. I don't think he'll have much struggle against those guys. I think he'll just put in two solid motos and get that overall. And then for the podium, I'm gonna go. I think the U.S. gets it done. I really do. I think Deegan's going to have a good day, even after the collarbone. I think he's still going to be good. I think RJ and Tomac are going to step up to the plate. I'm going to take the U.S. Oz in second. And then I'm going to go. I'm trying to think who. And then I think I'm going to take. Yeah, I think I'm going to take Team the Netherlands in third. I think it'll be a similar podium to last year. I think the Netherlands will be good. I think Koldenhoff and the Wolf will be both really solid. I think if Leonard can get a good race, it'll definitely help them. So I think that's what I'm going to take. I don't trust France. I think Feb won't be on his game, and I don't think Velen will be as good as I think he could be. So I want to go that. That's my final predictions for the year, and hopefully it surpasses Trey.
It'll be interesting to see because the only thing we really agree on is the MXGP class. I do have Jet Lawrence winning. I've predicted Jet Lawrence to win all but one race since we've started the Stire Sound. Oddly enough, he didn't win the race at St. Louis when I picked against him. It was Hunter Lawrence who won, but it's Jet. He's inevitable. I am different everywhere else across the board, though. In the open class, you guys both took Maxime Renault. I'm going Hunter Lawrence. It's been a fantastic year for HJ. I believe he gets the job done. MX2 class, I'm going bold. No, I'm not going Deegan. I'm not going to Wolf. I think, and you guys can easily call me crazy, because I know some listeners will probably call me crazy as well. Sasha Coonan is winning the MX2 class overall. He's not going to crash as much. He's going to be very fast. I got Sasha for the win. We've seen some surprise winners at the MX2 class before. I think back to Hunter Lawrence before he was this sought after superstar. His rookie year of MX2, he won the overall at Matterley Basin. I know it was wet a little bit, but Sasha Coonan, you talk about flat out speed. He's got it. You talk about bouncing off the dirt like rubber and getting back on the bike. He's also got that. I'm going bold though, going out on a limb and saying Sasha Coonan's winning the MX2 overall. I'm probably going to regret that decision in a couple days, but you know what? Sometimes you gotta go bold. Then my overall predictions, I have said it this entire time that I feel like Australia are the favorites. I feel like with the Team USA lineup, they are the overwhelming favorites, the heavy favorites now. I have Australia going back to back. Of course, I want to see Team USA take the victory, but I am a realist, and that Australia lineup is just too good, in my opinion, to lose. I have the Netherlands second. I have said also that I feel like the Netherlands are being a little slept on with the experience and talent of Koldenhoff and Vlaanderen, plus the raw speed and talent of De Wolf. I think the Netherlands are going to perform really well and move up one spot higher than they were last year. I do have the same podium as a year ago, just with second and third flipped. I do think Team USA will be on the podium, but I think that something along the lines will cost America, whether it's Tomac having a bad start and getting shuffled back a bit, even though he's rose to the occasion in the past, or potentially RJ getting shuffled around in the back. RJ, I feel like could be really solid for Team USA, but he's definitely the big question mark guy now. He doesn't have as much experience at that event as Tomac. And of course, Deegan has the flat out talent to go get those guys in the MX2 class, in my opinion. But RJ has a lot of guys to deal with. You think about Renault, like Hunter Lawrence. Of course, Jonas is in the open class this year. Calvin Vlanderen. Even a guy like Valentin Guillem, who of course usually would be behind RJ, but you never know. Valentin Guillem is legit. Plus add guys like Everts, who is a usual 250 guy on the 450, and it could mix up the order a little bit. But I have the Aussies going back to back. It's been a lengthy episode, but it's been a very fun episode. I cannot wait for the Motocross of Nations this weekend. I know these guys can't either. Ed, you're heading stateside this weekend. Safe travels. Is this your first Motocross of Nations event?
It's the first one that I will ever be sort of like covering it and interviewing the guys and sort of being in the media centre. I've been to every Matterley Basin one that I've been alive, and I went to Ernay a couple of years ago. So first one sort of overseas. I'm very, very
Gotcha.
excited. Can't wait to touch down and see all the guys race and be up close to it all.
Stoked to see your coverage and content from Ironman this weekend. Once again, thank you so much for joining us and giving the perspective from the European and the MXGP side of things. Jack, I know you're excited as well. Thank you, of course, as always, for being a part of the show. And thank you for getting Guillem Ferez aboard as well to talk a little bit about Team Spain's preparation and what their expectations for the weekend are like. Jack, it's finally here. Motocross of Nation. Let's have a weekend.
Yes, sir. I'm excited for it.
Thank you all for listening so much. We hope you guys learned and took away a bunch from today's episode. Who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? Who could be in the A final? who could be a random team to get the draw and get the first gate pick and spoil everything up, and everybody go, why is their guys so slow if they even though they have the first gate pick? It's going to be a fun weekend. Can't wait to see all the gear, all the graphics, the start practice, everything about the Motocross of Nations I love. Hopefully, some of you listeners will be able to attend the event. Of course, Jack and I will be watching from home. Ed will be in Ironman. If you listen to the show, you're going. Be sure to say hello to him. For Edward Heather, for Jack Noel, I am Trey Stire. This has been episode number 15 of the Stire Sound, your dedicated Motocross of Nations preview. The Stire Sound is fading out. Thank you so much for listening.